want to welcome everyone to the Four Esoterics, No Politics Allowed. And I'd like to remind everyone this podcast is being recorded. We follow Carlin's rule with one addition. Please be wearing pants. Let's welcome the Esoterics. Chris Buskirk, who will be on in a few seconds, publisher of AM Greatness. Ben Boychuk, the best editor from Big Bear to Arrowhead. And of course, Mr. Esoteric himself, Louis Fine. And let's, of course, welcome our Guest-oteric, Kim Delaney, star of one of my favorite movies of all time, The Delta Force, and one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Tour of Duty. And
only you would know that.
And yes, only I would know that. And that's, I want to welcome everybody. I've known Kim for close to 16 years, but when I met her, the only thing I think I had seen you in was Delta Force. And so there you are. In today's topic, we are discussing fads that no longer exist or things that we never thought would leave. So on that one, Kim was on a show called All My Children, which gave her big break. And it's one of the biggest soap operas of all time. But who in their wildest dreams ever thought soap operas would no longer exist?
Well, see, I thought you were going to mention NYPD Blue.
Well, that's a given. Come on, son. I had to tell Kim to take down the Emmy Award that she had up behind her.
Important point here, because we are broadcasting live, but when people see this, they will see it as a recording. Kim, you're a very brave woman to be where you are right now from your looted store on Melrose. And I want you to know, we're going to find the people who did this. I'm sure they're street cams, they're people, they're witnesses. And I see that they hurled some feces on your wall underneath that American flag. And for you to be there right now and to jeopardize your person, your physical security, is a testament to your dedication to the show. So
God bless. And if anybody has any questions or wants to say anything during the show, just type it in. We'll see. And I'd like to tell everybody to please don't be scared by Louis. He's the Rickles of our world. And if he doesn't crap on you, that means he doesn't like you. So pray you get crapped on by Louis Fine. But let's get back to it. What happened to soap operas? Because I grew up watching, and all of us probably grew up watching soap operas. And I think Louis had the best, or Kim actually raised the point that reality shows killed the soap.
Reality shows, yeah. I think that's what took over reality shows. We have 2 soaps left at this point.
I know. I remember at least two names of actors and actresses from soap operas, but in particular, The Guiding Light, which was interrupted to announce the assassination of President Kennedy. But that's beside the point.
You remember that?
I wasn't there. I wasn't there for the Kennedy assassination, but I've seen on the internet, there are various video services, including YouTube, which is a popular one, perhaps the most popular. And you can watch the telecast of Walter Cronkite announce the death of the president, for those who haven't seen it. But Brian Bloom and Kim Zimmer. Now, Brian Bloom was a good-looking Jewish guy who looked like a black Irish. He was like black Irish because he had dark hair, blue eyes, and he was on The Guiding Light. And the actress Kim Zimmer, who in a separate interview, the testimony to her strength as an actor was the fact that she could, in her words, cry on cue. And there was one other longtime actor on the show who played a police captain in the third Die Hard. And I don't remember his name, but
thanks for that totally useless piece of
but
information.
another part, when you get to The Young and the Restless, was the fact that, and I believe the late actor's name was Terry Armstrong. I'm going to have to look that up. But I had no idea that there was this subculture of gay men playing straight heartthrobs on soap operas at the height of the AIDS epidemic.
And let us get back to what we're talking about. Lewis in no way speaks for anyone. And
including himself.
yeah,
Google
including
Kim
himself.
Zimmer,
That's right.
Brian Bloom, Paige Turduck or whatever, because her character. Yeah, they had a sort of
She was also on NYPD Blue.
Oh, see, there you go.
Who is that?
Paige. Yeah, she's from Jersey.
She's a working actress. Okay, but let's get back to it off point. Let's get back to things things we never thought would stop. And I was actually infomercials. We all love infomercials. And I was watching this. I'm actually one of the few that still has cable. And there's this one new infomercial where you put this helmet lamp on your head and supposedly you're able to grow hair.
Oh my God, I know that one.
Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, if this product actually worked, they wouldn't need an infomercial. Which brings us to the 80s infomercial. Remember the one with the spray hair?
Ron Popeil.
That's the one I'm thinking of, yeah.
Do you know how desperate you have to be that before you leave, say, for a meeting or for work, and you've got your shirt and tie on, you decide, wait, I don't look either young enough, masculine enough, or convincing enough, so I'm going to take a can of spray paint and just at a distance and holding a hand mirror, just put a coat of Pantone.
Well, it actually took over. Just so you know, Lewis, it actually took over for people using shoe polish. Kim, what are some fads that you never thought you'd see leave?
Cabbage Patch Dolls.
Cabbage Patch Kids.
They're worth a lot. Now there were two types. Now my brother
Ben Boychuk, just so you know, Ben Boychuk actually has 7 of them.
My brother had one that he later, he and a friend cut the hair, dyed it, gave it a mohawk, put a screw in the ear, and a garbage bag for a shirt, a black hefty bag. But his name was Gilroy Dixon. And we got him at the Toys R Us on Route 4 in Paramus. But there were two types of Cabbage Patch Kids. The ones that we know that.
Did they do the mullet cut on?
I'm sorry?
Did they do the mullet cut on the Cabbage Patch?
Well, they gave him a mohawk.
But
so there were the Cabbage Patch Dolls that were licensed by Coleco, and those are the ones that by and large most people are familiar with. But if you have a Cabbage Patch doll before they were mass merchandised, which were bigger than the Coleco ones,
just get to the point. How much are they worth?
Hold on. And by the way, congrats on looting that floor mirror behind you. If you got one of the big ones by Xavier Roberts, whose signature graced every butt cheek of the Coleco ones, those are worth a lot. But a Cabbage Patch Kid from Coleco in the box, it's bucks.
I love how Buzzkirk came into the conversation as we're discussing Cabbage Patch Kids
and what's on their cheeks,
and the whole premise.
You actually look like a grown-up Cabbage Patch Kid with that beard.
Picture the pitch
that grew up. But I want to get back.
They're orphans that were found in a cabbage patch. As far as we know, they could be survivors from a serial killer that mass murdered their parents and were left to die in this cabbage patch.
Lewis, let's get back on point. Kim, you actually brought up jeans that we never thought. Whoever thought Calvin Klein's? Remember in the 80s, Calvin Klein's were huge. You know,
Jordache.
Wait, are you arguing
Vanderbilt?
That designer jeans are no longer popular?
No. What about the parachute pants?
Yeah, we brought up the parachute pants last time, which Lewis actually had a pair of parachute pants.
I had multiple pairs.
Do you still have them?
Oh, good Lord, no.
Because I was going to say we could.
I bet you wish you did.
Oh, you better believe it.
I was going to say we could take a break. And
parachute pants and members only jackets.
The founder of Members Only died recently, about 3 to 6 months ago.
I have a members only jacket. In fact, for my team that I work with, I bought them and then put our logo on so that we had members only jackets to wear to set. And I'll tell you something, everyone on our show wanted one of those jackets.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
Do they still make those, or do you have to buy those secondhand?
No, there's a company that makes them on Amazon.
Huh.
And then, so I bought a bunch of them
Shocking.
and then I took them to, someone to put a decal on or, like a logo on. So, but I wear mine like probably a good 24 times a year to show.
My brother has new old stock Ocean Pacific OP Velcro corduroy wallets.
Wow.
That's another brand I never thought would leave was Ocean Pacific.
I'd like to have I'd like to have some of those OP corduroy shorts.
Yeah.
What about Jams? Remember Jams?
But
On the
As if
members,
your parents didn't like you, they wouldn't get you the OPs. They'd get you the Jams.
Jams were great. I had a pair of Jams shorts
See?
and a blue dungaree, corduroy OP wallet, which my brother now has.
my father, I have a picture of my father from 4 years ago, so not long before he died.
Thanks for bringing that joy and going.
Yeah, no, but he's wearing the same members only jacket that he wore for like 35 years.
Yeah, I want to say my grandfather had a gray members only
Gray,
jacket
yes.
that he wore for about 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he definitely
Unaware that members only
Right?
jacket is a punchline.
Yeah, but Judah's grandfather definitely had a knockoff where one of the letters was missing.
Because he was a hard worker, and his son might be listening to the show.
So find out if when he was at that sewing machine in the garment district, he was wearing a members MEMBRS only jacket.
And,
You know how much I paid for this? $250.
okay, so let's get back to it. There are
Burlington
tons
Coat
of stuff.
Factory.
There are tons of stuff. So there's members only jackets. But I think as we're facing, there's something to be said about the days when you could turn on the TV and you knew from 12 to 4, you'd have soap operas and not news. Nobody?
I think most people were at work that you're talking to or at school.
That's not true. Tons of mothers were at home not being scared to death by watching the news, and they were watching Scorpio or Jenny Gardner.
So I know
Or
that during the
musicians.
summer when I went to go to my grandma's, I knew it was nap time because grandma wanted to watch her shows in the middle of the day. And it was everyone, you're taking a nap.
Correction. They were never shows. They were programs.
My
Or
story. How about these? The Nagel posters, Judah.
Or
Oh, yeah.
musicians were just waking up.
What are those?
I need to watch my programs.
Chris is putting a graphic on, and I don't know what that is, Chris.
What
Very
is it?
popular 80s
Yes,
artist.
the Nagel posters that graced
Yeah.
many a dorm room.
I was, yeah, I don't remember that. But
No,
we are going to go to a quick break. This first break is sponsored by Stone Creek Grill. Ben, why don't you
Bistro.
take us?
Stone Creek Bistro.
Stone Creek Bistro.
It's a
Blue-
bistro.
In Blue Jay, California.
I've been.
www.stonecreekbistro.com, where you'll find the best fried chicken sandwiches in probably the world, but certainly Southern California. Check out www.stonecreekbistro for hours, location, and phone number to make a reservation. They're back open for dine-in. Business is great, but now's the time to come up and have a chicken sandwich or a steak or anything. Best food of the mountain.
And we also found out that your computer is giving us audio feedback.
Not me, man.
No, it's Lewis.
So Lewis, we're gonna.
I know because I did the check.
By the way, it wasn't Terry Armstrong. I was close. Terry Lester. He played Jack Abbott on The Young and the Restless.
Thank you so much for that. And let's work on that on your thing. But also, there's like so many different things from past. And I was thinking about this because Kim has appeared on Letterman and Leno and all those different shows. I brag for you, Kim. But late night TV almost no longer is relevant. I mean, in a sense, 9 million people
Carson
watch
with
all 3 shows. Johnny Carson used to get 25 million people watching his show.
Mhm.
I mean,
That's the one show I missed.
And don't forget Thick of the Night.
Alan Thicke's short running show. But
Pat Sajak.
right, but there is no. That's another one, or Tom Snyder. But there is no more shows.
Well,
on.
he came on after. He had Tomorrow, and then he had The Late Late Show.
So Ben, what do you got for us? What fads did you think were fads or whatever?
Well, we had already we covered parachute pants and members only jackets. The one I really miss are video arcades.
Oh, I was going to say that.
Oh my
That's a good
God,
one.
that's a
But
great
we still
one.
kind of, you have to
Well-
find them, but not the same way.
No, not in the same way. And
Yeah.
I think that because I remember there was a great little one on Foothill Boulevard in La Crescenta where I grew up, where I would play Tempest and Galga and
Ooh, Tempest.
yeah,
Nice.
remember that?
Uh-huh.
Sense to me.
And Asteroids and all of those. You still have video game machines and you still have them in bowling alleys.
You have to go to the boardwalk, like the
Right.
Jersey. At the boardwalk, you have them. That's about it.
And I think arcades became synonymous with, I hate to say this, with drug use and pedophilia.
But
You must have gone to- I think
Yeah.
you went to a different arcade than I went to, Judah.
No,
There
I
was no
meant later on.
there was an arcade in Westwood, New Jersey called the Game Center that was run or subsidized by the PBA. And I kid you not, you'd be playing Double Dragon or Kung
Great
Fu
game.
Master. And the walls, it was a small place and it was dark. So you
Always dark.
Yeah.
Yes. The walls were papered with wanted pictures.
Of the,
Out here in LA, in Jerry's Deli used to have them. Do they
Jerry's
still
Deli
do that?
still does have a few,
Does-
but they have
Yeah.
Are there two Jerry's Delis left in Sino
Yeah.
and Studio City?
I don't know. One was
they have,
closed.
but they have
How many?
7. They have
Livy,
7
Livy.
games.
Say hi.
And
I gotta okay. I was gonna introduce my daughter, but she doesn't.
so Ben, that's actually a great one. Is video arcades? What do you got for us, Chris?
We had that. I want to stick out the video arcades. We had the one here. I grew up in Phoenix called Super Fun. It was dark, as they always were. There were maybe 100-ish games.
Yeah.
And everybody, if you go in there, it was basically mandatory you smoke Marlboro Reds.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did you? I don't see you ever smoking, Chris.
Of
Do you remember
course,
the,
if you ever wanted to get on the Defender game, you were not getting on there if you didn't line up your quarters along the top and weren't smoking a Marlboro Red to prove your masculinity.
That's true.
Defender, which was I think licensed by Bailey, if I'm not mistaken. But do you
Never
remember?
are.
At least this was a phenomenon where I grew up, because the unwritten rules or the laws of nature of the arcade claiming your spot by putting a quarter down
Yes.
on the
Exactly.
screen and can I just offer a plug here for Dig Dug?
That was my sister's game. She loved it. She's a big Dig Dug fan.
I'm so behind on your guys' times. But you're right. The video arcade no longer exists, and I don't think I would imagine that parents probably wouldn't feel comfortable allowing their kids to go to a
Well,
video arcade.
It
Let's-
Kids
depends.
don't even let their kids smoke anymore.
They vape instead.
Yeah.
Totally.
What were you about to say, Ben?
I mean, to the extent that any video arcade still exists,
They're corporatized, right? They're like Dave and Buster's.
right? Well, yeah, there's that, and mini golf places. But to the extent that they still existed before March, a little something may have.
Hmm. I wonder if any existed. Those were great spaces, though. I think for kids to be in trouble and to be outside of their parents' domain, which I actually support.
But Dave and Buster's is an adult version of Chuck E. Cheese, and Chuck E. Cheese is still around. And I remember playing Super Pac-Man there before my parents would leave us with a relative because they would go to South Florida. And if you've been to Chuck E. Cheese, I don't know if they still have it, but they did when I was a kid. Do you remember the pool of balls that you would dive into?
Oh,
and
yeah.
7 hours later, you'd have the norovirus and
Whoever thought that was a great idea? Put a bunch of balls in a thing and let kids dive
and a
into
pig,
them.
yeah, jump on some other kid's head.
Yeah, and not
Triple
think
him.
there could be an issue here. And what about you, Chris? So you still, what do you miss the most, Chris?
I'm not going to say that this is not something I missed, but you reminded me of something that an acquaintance was telling me last night. We were at a graduation party, and I was talking with another couple, and the woman was telling me that we were talking about like different these times are and what sort of accepted norms are. She was talking about how right before she graduated high school, which would have been like late 80s, maybe the very, very early 90s, she and three of her friends, they were all on, I can't remember what sports team they were on, but they both went out to the lake with the two football coaches to drink beer and like hang out in their bikinis with two 35-year-old married men.
Holy
She says,
moly.
which she's like, that didn't seem weird to us at the time. She says, as I look back on it, I'm thinking, like, basically, what the hell?
Okay, so
It's a subplot to the movie Teachers, which I've mentioned before, where the gym teacher knocks up, and I'm gonna guess the actress is the blonde, Bruce Dern's daughter. What's her name?
Laura.
I'm gonna look it up. I have to look it up if she was in the movie, but that's who I picture. I know Nick Nolte was in it, and I saw it in the theater. But do you remember when it was acceptable and even commendable to at least be a college professor sleeping with your student?
I don't personally.
I mean, I didn't. I'm that came,
I'm
but that
very
was
happy
that was a
for you
great
that
perk of
happened.
tenure.
But you actually brought up a funny memory of.
And somebody mentioned, by the way, that Chuck E. Cheese has no balls.
Yes, yes. And Darcy also mentioned that she's your biggest fan. So yes,
Okay.
you definitely have bragging rights, Darcy. But one of the things I want to bring up also is what you just mentioned, because my mother is actually here, is that I remember, and Lewis could totally attest to this, in the 80s in New York City with the trains, my mother would allow us to take the train. This is early 90s maybe, but she would always say, stand next to the conductor. So like, you know, and as I look back on it now, like if something, God forbid, was happening on the train, like somehow the conductor was going to break up whatever was going on. But in those days, you know, it was definitely a different place in New York City.
I want to tell you something. Aside from the fact that you and Oswald both loved the New York City subways.
Yes.
He used to ride. He was a truant. He'd ride them forever. I am so good. Ready for this? Not only was Laura Dern in Teachers, you know who else was?
Andrew McCarthy, Rob Lowe.
Close from that
Kevin
era.
Bacon.
Ralph Macchio, but even better. That's just a taste. That's just a taste.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to the 4 Esoterics with our guest-oteric today is Kim Delaney, and we're going to take a quick break.
But not before I tell you who was in this.
Tell us.
Alan Garfield.
Thank you. He's got man love for Alan Garfield, and who God rest his soul, passed away a couple months ago. Producer girlfriend, tell us about Colleen's breadsticks.
Do you need a salty, cheesy artisan snack for this pandemic? Do you live in Manhattan, New Jersey, the Chicagoland area, Upper Michigan, or parts of California? Then get yourself some Colleen's Better Than Breadsticks, the perfect pandemic treat.
There you are. And they truly are amazing breadsticks. Welcome back. You're listening to the 4 Esoterics with our guest-oteric Kim Delaney. And today, welcome Barry Fine to the group. Today we're discussing things that we never thought would cease to exist. But here's an interesting thing, since we're all, whoever thought New York would look like it a month ago or a week ago would look like it did now. I mean, remember how New York City, whoever thought Times Square would be Disney World?
Well, now it's reverted to type. You want to talk about whatever happened to, or do you remember, peep shows? We're talking about the quarter from the arcade. Two quarters.
None of us.
My brother, as we were driving through New York City to get back to the George Washington Bridge in New Jersey to civilization, we passed a peep show that said 50 cents, and my brother said, "What do I get for 50 cents?" And my mother said, "A disease." And I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, because I'm going to connect it. I'm going to bring it all together with Kim, because Kim was on NYPD Blue, which also included Rick, not Ricky Schroeder, when he was Ricky on Silver Spoons. The one day I wasn't at home on a Sunday, I was at some friend's house. My mother, who sold a fake Rolex to a woman she met in South Florida at the Sonesta Beach Hotel and Tennis Club in Key Biscayne, Florida, introduced her to her friend who came all the way down to from Greenwich, Connecticut to North Jersey to buy a suite of fake Rolexes. with her son and daughter, and my mother had admonished the daughter not to scratch her coffee table. And then she turned to the son and said, you look a lot like Ricky Schroeder. And he said, I get that. A lot of people say that. So when the mother wrote the check for the fake Rolexes, my mother was too slow to realize that it said Diane Schroeder on it with her street address, Greenwich, Connecticut. Fast forward to the Reagan inaugural ball. There's a photo. Hold on. There's a photo of Rick Schroeder, then Ricky, wearing the fake Rolex, shaking hands with who? Casper Weinberger. And where my mother bought the fake Rolexes in Teaneck, New Jersey, she brought that issue of People magazine to show everybody.
That's
my story is done.
I always think of every time you get into one of your soliloquies, I'm always thinking about that scene from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with Steve Martin when he says, when he says, when you tell these stories,
have a point.
That was the point.
I know it was
someone.
It was
whose mother bought him a fake Rolex that my mother sold that has been immortalized by Getty Images. And
you raise a great point, though. Remember the days on the streets in New York City where you'd have people opening up their jackets selling Rolexes.
Remember
on one hand,
toll takers on the turnpike. The guy would have on a fake Rolex president in gold plated.
Okay, so Kim, what else do you miss? What else would you like to bring back? What else did you think? Or Chris?
Legworm. I'm trying to think that all those. Well, we kind of still have the video things, but it was Richard Simmons and Jane Fonda and all those that started it out. But that's still kind of.
My biggest regret: not going to his Thursday class, which is within walking distance. He used to do a Thursday class.
Richard Simmons?
Yes, in Beverly Hills. Beautiful studio. It's an Art Deco studio. And one day, my now wife and I were just exploring that little stretch, and there are beautiful shops there, one of which there are multiple places that could serve as my fictional detective agency. But we saw this gorgeous Art Deco studio, and it looked like what it is inside a dance studio. It had the mirrored walls, like one of the panels that Judah lifted while looting a few days ago, but the whole wall was glass. And I found out it was Richard Simmons' studio, and they said, if you come on Thursday, he leads the class, and I never did it.
Okay, thanks again. Steve Martin, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Remember the rule: if you're gonna have a story, make sure.
I remember his TV show where it would open up and
has a point.
They show you his customized plate on his Rolls Royce that he'd run out into the studio filled with obese people.
Buzzkirk, what do you miss? What do you think would never leave?
Can I flip it on you and say things that I wish had not been introduced?
Yes.
Yeah, fake progress. We think it's progress, but it actually is degrading. The cell phone, make it go away. Can we please have some privacy back? Some silence? I want to obviously be able to do this with you, but if we could just maybe not be called all the time, and you can maybe have a space where you can just be with other people and they're talking to you and everything's not mediated by a screen.
But I don't think a lot of people actually talk on their phones so much as, in my case, do everything else, read, text.
All of the above.
Yeah, Kim and I were talking about this yesterday, and I said to her, if at a certain point, if we're texting and it's more, and I do this with you, Lewis, if it's more than 2 or 3 texts, let's just speak on the phone. It's going to be a heck of a lot quicker. But yeah, you raise a great point, and we can't take we're never going to take the technology away, but it was much simpler. Do you remember when we were younger, getting a football game together, or if you'd want to meet all your friends, you'd have to do a chain call. You call him, he'll call you. Now it's like It's like Insta. We could have 15 people. Well, they don't play on the football field.
You know what we called when caller ID was introduced, and I got my mother to get it. I can't believe I convinced her to get it. When it wasn't even built into the phone, you had this little display. It looked like a miniature digital equipment terminal.
They still have that
workstation. Right. My friend and I called it Hand of God because the idea that you could know who was calling and not take the call, that you would have that kind of power. And I just want to segue for a moment. Kim, would you give out the GoFundMe address for concerning the vandalism to your store where you're broadcasting from?
I'm pretty safe.
Because we want to hit certain milestones to put you back in business.
But Chris raises a great point. It's like there's a certain simplicity that when people don't think they could reach you at all hours of the night, when they don't, you get emails at midnight about work.
I texted you at 3 a.m. Where the hell were you?
Yeah, I
was asleep.
Yeah,
and then they keep doing it, thinking that rather than one text or one voicemail in the middle of the night, when you get up, please call me, this is important, I'll just keep doing it even though your phone is off, because somehow you will know. There will be that connection. Do you remember also the change slot on payphones that people would, poke their finger in?
That's another thing. Whoever thought payphones would no longer exist? I mean,
greatest payphone story ever, courtesy of my brother. He's in Manhattan. He had to make a call. He didn't have a cell phone at the time.
Does this have a point?
Payphone across the street. He's about to cross some busy street in Manhattan, and before he gets to the payphone, a homeless man beats him to it, picks up the receiver, puts it in his pants, scratches and cleans his ass, puts it back up, and just moseys on away.
Oh my God! And look, again, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the 4 Esoterics. We don't really know Lewis. He just found our IP address and this chat room. He speaks for none of us. Thank you for that image that none of us will be able to shake for the rest of the day.
Did a complete it was his anal scratcher.
But again, Lewis, thank you. We have managed to lose people through that story. And
we've got a question from the chat for Kim.
Yes.
Darcy asks, of all your characters, which of them would you want to bring back to tell more of their story? That's a great question.
That is a great question. Philly?
Philly's a good one. Yeah, we could learn more about her. Philly is a very good one. Even Diane Russell. Jenny.
That's NYPD Blue.
And if we're back to the 80s, where would Jenny be at this point?
Or a question for the ages. For that brief flicker of time, as we measure it in terms of the universe, that Dennis Franz was a sex symbol.
He actually.
There were women who said to themselves, there were women who closed their eyes, turned on devices, and pictured themselves with Dennis Franz.
You know what? I want to tell you something, Lewis. It's
that buzzing sound you hear is the one woman who still thinks Dennis.
And Lewis's audio went off, and he's talking, and nobody could hear him.
That's a feature, not a bug, Judah.
That's my autistic fit, Kim, if you're not familiar when I'm trying to be serious. I have something to say.
Okay, by the way, we lost your audio. Getting back to the question, Kim, who else would you want to bring back?
Who else?
You can think about it. It's actually a good question, though. And
the girl from Tour of Duty, Alex Devlin. That could be fun.
Yeah. Have you guys watched Tour of Duty, by the way, any of you? It was a fantastic 80s show about the Vietnam War. It was a terrific show.
Okay, you bring up Vietnam. I have to ask the question because, in fairness, full disclosure, Judah had to correct me. But for the conversation I had with Judah on the phone, I would not have known that you're not related to that other Delaney.
That's another great point. How many people think you're related to Dana Delaney?
Well, they always think we're sisters, but our last names are spelled differently. Mine's
which I learned. And here's the other thing.
But we just say, we know each other, but I don't know. People just.
But here's the thing, and I say this as a compliment to you. There's a big class distinction. She's Lace Curtin, you're Shanty. She went to Andover.
I know, and I came from Roxborough.
I know.
Okay, this is like East Coast talk.
No, we're talking about universal ethnic slurs by way of economic distinction. Please.
Okay, and
how old is Dana?
I don't know.
She was born 1956.
Okay.
What do
Sorry,
they
I'm
say?
just-
8 number and mine's unlisted.
Yeah, well, that wasn't always the case, right? With IMDb, now they finally
Yeah, I know.
you don't have to
There are no
list your name.
secrets.
But what did Can I ask you a question? What did people do before IMDb? And I'm asking this as an honest question.
They had to remember things.
Like phone numbers, everything.
But like,
Yes,
how
phone
did you
numbers is a
find out
good
what
one.
people
You don't
were
know
in?
any of your friends' phone numbers or your family, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
2 of them, because you don't have to.
3, yeah.
That's so true. Like, if I got to be honest with you, if I got lost and somebody said, can I call somebody for you? And I didn't have my phone, I'd be like, you could call my phone.
Yeah.
You could call me.
Or Thomas Guide, if you got lost on the road. And you
Yes.
I bought my Thomas Guide at Borders Books in
Oh.
Westwood.
Oh.
I opened it once. First of all, the print is it's a 3-point font. And I don't know how you're supposed to use this as you're driving. I want to know how many accidents happened and fatalities because people were on page 783 of the Thomas Guide. Threw it in my trunk where a bottle of root beer, a glass bottle, exploded onto it. The pages were just were stuck. I never used it again. I map quested it.
Thank you for that wonderful story again. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to the 3 Esoterics and somebody we just found on the side of the road, Louis Fine.
Right. And give out the address, because Kim is an assistant manager at that Marc Jacobs on Melrose that was looted. And she put the lights back on today. She's very brave. There are no cops in the area. So she's doing this unarmed and alone.
And by the way, you both brought up phones. Whoever thought we wouldn't have phone books anymore? I mean, just the idea that the yellow pages. Do you think when the yellow
Remember when
pages,
they throw it against your door to let you know it came?
Yeah, and do you think they saw it coming? I mean, can you imagine you're the king of the world, or you're like the plastic bag maker, and all of a sudden people said, the people that own the straw companies, and somebody says you're obsolete. No longer can are phone books being given out.
The great thing about the phone book was the white pages was when you were looking up your friends or classmates, and because if you had an unlisted number, which you had to pay for, that was you were rich. So it was always interesting. I would just go down the list of names of people I knew and see what's the number, how many listings do they have.
And let me ask this question. How many of you believe that Louis used to prank people?
I didn't. I wasn't big on pranking.
I'm very disappointed to hear that.
I still do.
Sorry?
I still do. But I've found other ways of pranking that do not include the phone. Like when I was in college, I used to do this bit where I worked at a Chinese restaurant and I would call my friend who was at U of I was in Madison, and I got him all the time. Well, now every once in a while I just send her random food. Like I just randomly Postmate people different stuff, and I have the number of the Postmate driver, and then I will call them and say they're going to deny they ordered this, but you must give it to them and I will give you a fat tip. And so I've part of my pranking has been ordering people food I know they will never eat and seeing how they deal with it and calling them in that moment. Like, hey, what's going on? They're like, someone just randomly Postmated me duck feet. I don't know what to do. It's like, oh, try them. Are they good? So,
by the way, which raises a great point with beepers no longer existing. I used to prank people with beepers because I used to I would call somebody's beeper and have them put somebody else's number in to call back.
So you would prank one of those private Hasidic ambulance drivers in Crown Heights?
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to the 4 Esoterics, and we are here with our Guest-oteric, Kim Delaney. We will take, and you could find us all at the number 4 ESOTRICS, and also you can find us on YouTube and iTunes. And with that, we'll take a quick break with Ben Boychuk.
I was just checking your spelling, and I think you spelled
Esoteric's wrong?
I think you spelled esoterics wrong. It's numeral
got
4,
an X.
ESOTERICS. But that's not what I want to talk about right now. If you're listening to this or watching this, there's a very strong chance. No, you might be hearing it on iTunes. We want you to subscribe on iTunes. It's a very good chance that you're probably seeing it at American Greatness, where every single day, 7 days a week, you will find content like no other from the likes of Victor Davis Hanson, Conrad Black, Julie Kelly. The list goes on and on, only because I'm blanking right now, and I shouldn't be. I need to get more sleep. But go visit us. And after you're done listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, check out the site at www.amgreatness.com.
Welcome back to the 4 Esoterics. Oh, so here's a question I have for you, Kim, and I think all of us are gonna do you think celebrity has gone too far with being too revealing of themselves via Instagram? Remember, it was exciting in the olden days finding out about your favorite celebrity when they were on The Tonight Show. Now we know everything. Like, what else is there to ask somebody that reveals everything in their life?
I like for myself to keep it a little more private. I do it purely for business reasons, and I keep it very simple and general. That's what I try to do. So I do, I think it's more exciting to not know, like anything, whether it's, can I say?
I think it just invites stalking.
Revealing yourself in different ways.
Let me tell you something, Kim, you could say anything. Lewis
Okay.
There's nothing that could do.
Yeah, I think it's better to keep a little bit of mystery. And I was going to say, whether it's with sexual, when you're, you don't want to see everything up front. You want to work for it. You
want to have an imagination. You want to,
yes.
And that goes to Chris's point with the phones. There is nothing. There's
no privacy.
Dennis Miller had a great joke about this. He said, when you look at our great-great-grandparents, we have one picture of them. Because that's all anybody could afford. 150, great-great-great-great-grand. That was all they could afford.
And no one's ever smiling.
What?
No one's ever smiling.
And no one's ever smiling, right? Like, because the bulb, the flash hit them so hard. But in 500 years or 200 years, somebody's going to say, "Hey, I got like 1,000 pictures to show you of my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather," because everything will have been stored. And it's like.
Yeah, no, but an EMT pulse will have hit North America by then, and it'll all be gone. They'll be like, was there anybody did they have access to any kind of media in 2020?
This was a subplot of the sequel to Blade Runner.
Right.
But there is something.
Was that Cool Runnings?
But
no, that's with the Haitians.
And God rest his soul, John Candy. But there is a certain amount of I don't think you can go unprivate. When we grew up, there was a certain amount of privacy. You didn't know everything about everybody. And now there seems to be, when we were growing up, can you imagine your parents putting a picture of you for 100 million people to view online?
My mother would. She used to sign autographs for me. With her
If you got 100 million followers, you're making
not my name, her name.
That's really funny,
great.
actually. Your mother used to sign pictures of you with her name?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't even in our thinking, though. I mean, but that's pictures, right? It wasn't even in our thinking that one day everybody would be posting about their family, what they ate for dinner last night. I mean, whoever thought to themselves, I'm interested in knowing what you're about to eat and what you ate yesterday.
Well, it was something you did as a family the first night or the first 2 nights after having bought a Sony camcorder at Crazy Eddie or the Wiz. Whatever happened to missing children? Remember missing and the milk cartons? Whatever. Do people not kidnap children?
Nobody cares anymore.
Amber Alerts.
The Amber Alert.
But you're
Yeah,
right.
it's not the same though.
No, you're right though. There was a certain sort of, I don't want to say fun.
Breakfast wasn't breakfast without looking at the black and white grainy photo of some stranger, a 7-year-old who's now presumably 35 who went missing, and you're having, you'd form a Berlin Wall of cereal boxes, Fruity Pebbles, Cheerios, Golden Grams, Sugar Smacks, and you poured 2% or whole, and you'd see a picture of some kid. It was always a blurry image. You couldn't make out whether.
I can't believe I'm going to go into agreement with Lewis on this one, but it was a sort of odd thing or interesting thing to, pick up a carton of milk and see on the back of it a child that was missing.
Yeah, well, my brother still is part of the virtual task force looking for the remains of Eitan Pates.
And okay, so one more thing I want to also is game shows. Remember when we were growing up, or you remember in the 80s, you had icons that were game show hosts. Richard
Wink Martindale.
Sorry?
Wink Martindale.
Wink Martindale.
Yeah.
Still around.
Chuck Woolery. They were almost stars themselves.
Gene Rayburn.
What was that show?
Go
Match
play
Game.
yourself.
Match Game.
But this goes to the point that we
Who was
were talking
Ricky
about.
Famous? Who was on that one?
Robin Leach.
Robin Leach.
Which show did he host?
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Yeah.
Champagne
Wishes and Caviar Dreams.
Caviar Dreams. Which
Crazy.
goes back to the point.
I actually did one of those shows. Sorry, Judah.
Oh,
I
sorry,
did one
go
of
ahead.
those shows.
I'm actually
And-
curious now. You did one of his Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous?
I don't even know half the stuff I've done. But way back, and I went with the next husband, and they set up everything. I'm not rich and famous, you know what I mean? I was just starting out, and they sent us to Lanai, and it was all set up. We had a butler, you could put like 8 people in the place, anything you wanted. You went outside and had some lunch. You had 4 people serving you. They follow you around. It was hysterical for absolutely no reason at all.
Oh, that's great.
One thing, and this just proves that they were looters and they weren't protesters. That your right, our left, that artwork you've got at the bottom. If they were really protesters, they would have smashed that.
Yeah.
And we the total.
And by the way, congrats to Ben who looted.
Thank you for that.
Hold on. Congrats to Ben who looted a bust of one of the lesser Roman emperors. You can see it from his trailer of Augustus Caesar Jefferson Roosevelt, and so we each got a little something.
And by the way, the whole point of this is, and if you just tuned in, is just not to think for an hour. And I think it's really been lost in society is the ability to, and getting back to all my children, and when I was a kid, we had 1 or 2 televisions in the house, and I was forced to watch soap operas with my sisters, and they watched General Hospital, and I would watch like a show like Vegas afterwards with Robert Urich, and and there was a time, and God, it always sounds like I'm 44, but there was a time when we were allowed to just have an hour or 5-hour break from the real world. You found out what was going on in the news at night or in the morning when you got the paper. And I somehow feel like, like losing all of these things has brought a real seriousness. And we need to, in a sense, bring back where people just don't think for an hour.
So, but for the copy of the Daily News that your father would roll into a baton and beat you with, you're saying your family had no books. There was no printed material where you could pick it up and read.
My dad brought home all the, because he worked for Time Life. So we got all, we got Sports Illustrated, we got all of those amazing things. But I just think there's a certain, I don't think we're being too nostalgic. I think it's really imperative that people learn to shut things out, shut the news out, shut the darkness out, by just talking sometimes about things that have no significance.
It's a much easier way to do it.
Remember Koosh Balls?
Sorry, Kim?
Koosh Balls. Remember Koosh Balls from the 80s?
Of course. Remember the hacky sack, which my chemistry teacher called burnout ball?
I think I have a Koosh
Remember
ball
burnouts?
And I still have a Koosh ball somewhere.
Guidos and burnouts, where did they go?
I mean, it's yes. Where did they go? And I do think what Chris's point of bringing up about this thing we have here, that you were able to turn a computer into a computer to show me a graphic, sizes up all the problems we have. It's like, you know, what I love about Lewis's memory, so much of it comes from reading. Lewis, you've read a lot. And I think Ben Boychuk.
No, I've seen, I mean, culture and stuff. By the way, there's no way you don't do a virtual Shabbos lighting with that phone.
And so Ben, getting back to you, anything you missed that you wish you could bring back? So you always sound like it's an imposition when I ask you a question. You're like, oh man.
Yeah, you came back around to me.
What was the 19th?
Yeah, right. No, I miss. I was thinking about what you were saying a moment ago, which is why this gave me a little bit of pause, because I was thinking about the difference between, you know, the news coverage that we used to have versus the 24/7 feed the beast news coverage that we have now. And one thing that I will always remember, when my father would come home from work, he would flip on the television and switch to Channel 7 News, ABC in LA. And, you know, you would have that half-hour broadcast before the national news would come on with Peter Jennings. And one of the things I always, that kind of tuned me into politics when I was a young guy was the Channel 7 News would have these debates, 5-minute, maybe even less than that, debates between Bruce Hershenson and John Tunney. And
I would have loved to have seen those. Bruce Hershenson is great.
Yeah.
Go on, let him finish.
But you know, the difference between then and now is that, I mean, first of all, that it was truncated, and so you got some of that infotainment type of stuff. You got a lot of really low calorie information, but at least it wasn't all consuming. You got just enough politics from those Hershenson Tunney debates, and you got just enough local news, and you got just enough. And now I think it's just all a bit too much. So
can I throw out some names that are going to bring a smile to the faces of Judah and Kim and our listeners?
Yeah.
And wait till I'm done.
You have 30 seconds.
Roland Smith, Carol Martin, Jim Jensen, Warner Wolf, Bree Walker. Here's my Bree Walker impersonation.
Oh no.
Okay, you actually brought up Warner Wolf. These are all New York.
Let's go to the videotape.
Let's go to the videotape. And but you know, can I ask you a question, Kim? Because I'm actually really curious.
Chuck Scarborough.
You know, do you remember? I mean, obviously, we all remember a time where everybody watched network television. If you missed a show, you'd record it on your VCR.
Yeah.
Do you think the binging has ruined the way we view television, the way we watch TV? Because you used to be able to watch an episode of a show, let it sink in for a week, and then you'd get to the next episode. Now there's no chronology to shows, to television, because you're watching 10 at the same time. You don't have a chance to let it sink in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I used to, like, if you're watching Brady Bunch or whatever you're watching with your TV dinners, you know, at that time I have 4 siblings, but it was the 3 of us first and then the other 2 younger. And the 3 of us would just sit in front of the TV with our little TV dinners, wherever, you know, mom and dad were. And then we would talk about it afterwards, you know, with my other brothers. And it was fun. Like, you remembered that was our family dinner.
And for the record, you are, where are you in the grouping? Are you the youngest? You're the oldest of the children? I'm
second and the only girl.
And so one other thing, by the way, so you're at the last. It is the last, but a few days ago it was the last extant Sims clothing store where you're now housed, and this is your safe house on Route 17 in Paramus, New Jersey.
Right.
I see what they've done, and it's a crime. Remember Sims?
And Chris, do you think that's the case too? I mean, just like that, we don't even have time to digest. There's no.
I'm thinking about that. It's hard to parse that one for me, because the quality of television at the high end anyway is so much higher than it was.
See, I have to humbly disagree. I have to humbly disagree with you.
Do you remember 5 words?
I mean, Dallas, Dynasty, like all these episodic shows that were done in the 70s or 80s. I mean, they were entertaining, but I mean, if you compare them to this best stuff that's being made now, it's just way better. I
But
mean, the stuff
5
today is
words.
just being done. Is being done at a higher level.
Well, let me ask.
I agree with that.
Well, I disagree with you because Kim was on a show that I think was the creators and writers of it created 2 of the best cop TV shows of all time.
But it's often grouped with the best episodic television of that.
Right,
that
100%.
began that era.
Yeah, which was Hill Street Blues and obviously NYPD.
No. NYPD Blue is part of that grouping that includes The Sopranos and this renaissance in television.
Agreed.
But can I just mention, if you're a certain age or era, and especially from the East Coast, 5 words that are going to resonate with Kim and especially Judah, whose father beat him to these words. Can I eat in peace? Can I eat in peace?
I love how Lewis has this projection. Like he projects what happened to him onto all of us.
Shirtless at a kitchen table.
Lewis,
can I eat in peace?
This is like therapy for Lewis because he's this
Kim
is
knows what I'm talking about.
This is his therapeutic sessions. And Darcy, for Kim, one of your most influential movie roles was Closer and Closer. What was your favorite part about that role? Closer and Closer.
Oh, Closer and Closer. That I actually had to learn how to run around in a wheelchair, but it was
when was that?
It was a mystery. It was a mystery movie.
What year?
That might have been like 97, maybe 96.
It was 1996. You wrote.
96. Okay, yeah.
She truly is your biggest fan.
I know.
And, not to offend her other fans that are listening. But you're right. I guess NYPD Blue, that's a great point you brought up, Lewis. NYPD Blue, The Sopranos were sort of the jumpstart of the new golden age of television,
right? Of
it being more real, more.
And I don't think a lot of people at the time knew it, at least with The Sopranos, until the second or third season. It was critically acclaimed from the start, but it was still. It was still disrespected to the extent that, and I remember this, when everyone's heartthrob for however long it takes, depending on the device and battery power, Dennis Franz won an Emmy and mentioned by name James Gandolfini and saluted his work, but it was taboo because it was an HBO show. It wasn't network. Right. So. And now, I mean, it's all these cable shows.
It's totally, you're right. It's totally and it happened so fast. And this is going to what Chris said. I somehow think, it's like when you go from 1900 to 1960 or 1980, when all of us, had telephones, right? When the simple point, or 1990, when the simple point of a telephone was to speak on it. And then all of a sudden, within 20 years, we've gone from it almost went too fast.
We're talking about the atom bomb versus the hydrogen bomb, because when you went from a phone to call waiting to caller ID, you had weaponized that thing.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. But even then, it was paced. We lost pace. You know what I mean?
Now, the nowhere technology.
Things have come so quickly, and to parents, I don't know how you deal with it. I don't know how you deal with all the technology. If I had a child, you'd have to block things on their phones. Whoever thought that you'd need to, that a phone would be some sort of, which is sometimes used as a weapon.
You just put your kids in mittens and they can't use them.
My mother actually used to buy. Who was I telling this to? Was it you, Lewis? I was telling you my mother used to make me wear mittens, and I'd always lose them. Remember mittens? The kids even.
Yeah, did you have like Bill Cosby called them the idiot mittens? Like they had the string that attached them, and they would go up your sleeve, so you couldn't lose them.
Yes,
those are called rape mittens.
It would drive my mother crazy because every day coming home from school, I would lose a mitten. She would sew them to my jacket. I'd lose a mitten. I could not keep a hold of my mittens. And
Can I tell you, we need to get John Irving to update Oliver Twist to make you the Jewish foil to the villainous Jew Fagin, because you'll be Oliver Twist's friend who always loses his mittens and gets beaten in the home. So there's that.
Okay, thank you. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to the 4 Esoterics, and our guest-oteric today is Kim Delaney. We're going to wrap it up in a second, but I want each one of you one thing, and I'll give you a second to think about this. One fad you want brought back, and one thing you wish could be taken back. There's nothing like good dead air. So
Earth shoes.
Shoes?
Earth shoes.
I thought you said Jews.
No. No,
I don't even know what Earth shoes are.
Yeah, I don't know what that is either.
You don't know Earth shoes? And you're
No
older than
idea.
I am, old man.
I've never heard of them.
It was a fad in the very early 70s. They were sort of reverse platform shoes. They were very strange, and they were bad for your posture.
I'm trying to imagine you, Ben, wearing platform shoes right
No, it's exactly. Oh, I know. Est. Remember Est?
Yes.
Yeah, but
and I
it's still
remember
around.
it because that was my
Founder.
favorite scene from Stripes with John Candy when he when they were all sitting around and he's like, and he had to lose weight and his therapist told him to join Est. And he goes, but it was $400.
But that later morphed into, and by the way, sue me, I'm judgment proof. That later morphed into, if I'm not mistaken, Landmark Foundation. I'm being serious.
No, he could be 100% serious on that
I'm
one.
being 100% serious.
Wow.
What about you? What about you, Kim? What would you love to bring back, and what do you think we should get rid of? And
Wouldn't like
Diane?
shoulder pads. The shoulder pads we used to have.
Oh my God! Why is it that we think about these things as we're always wrapping up? We're like shoulder pads. That's right. I mean,
That one to come back.
okay, so that you don't want to come back. But
No.
what would you want to bring back?
Yo-yos.
Nice.
Whammo, they still make yo-yos.
Yo-yos
Yeah,
made a resurgence
the whole
around
game.
like 2005.
So you guys are parents, Ben, Lewis, Chris, Kim. What did you? I mean, Chris, does your son even know what a yo-yo is?
Probably because it's one of my favorite slurs for people. So I call people yo-yos all the time.
Other than him,
But I don't think he's ever had the experience of yoing.
I mean, that's incredible to me. I mean, that's the.
Both my
I wanna
kids have
bring back-
yo-yos.
Moon boots, the snow boots, moon boots. Remember moon boots?
Yep.
Mhm.
I mean, do
And one
people
thing
still-
I wish would come back: Persians.
And again,
you're
that's
in
Lewis
LA,
Fine.
Lewis.
He
I think you can
represents-
probably locate a few.
Yeah.
And, I am pronouncing this. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Diane, hi back. What about you, Ben? What do you want to have back?
Well, I'm not sure. They're probably Borders books. How about that? I'd like Borders books to come back.
That's I agree with you. The bookstore.
Yeah.
Amazon's reopening bookstores now.
Yeah, but
I've been into their stores. They're garbage.
it's not the same. Borders in Westwood. I could have, for the amount of money I spent at Borders in Westwood and Tower Records on Sunset, I could have had a down payment on a house.
Greatest compliment I got from that Borders in Westwood. I was living in Westwood at the time.
Thanks for leaving.
No, I got a nod.
Property values have increased.
A nod from one of the regulars who was homeless. He looked at me and he went,
Oh.
Kindred
Like he did-
spirits.
You know
And-
what? You're completely right. That's something that has been really lost is the nod to the people at the store
Mhm.
that we've lost the nod. We've lost the we've lost the neighborhood feel of going into that store and knowing the people that work there.
That's another topic. We should do that because I have thoughts, but we don't have time.
What are they?
No, it's a long soliloquy. that we won't have time for this time.
Yeah, that's next show.
That's
Okay, I'll tell
another
you
show.
what. If you know, this is like asking a girl back on a first date. You know, when they, when you're on a first date and you say, "Can we go out again?" So I'm gonna say, Kim, could we go out again? And
Judy, you're supposed to ignore her text for 3 days and then ask her.
Oh, is that the 3-day rule?
I read these things online. What do I know? My wife doesn't let me date.
I don't.
And to everybody listening to, we'll be doing this again on Tuesday, hopefully. And Ben is picking the topic, which is what, Ben?
Third places. That community third place that's neither home nor work, home away from home. The idea of being a regular someplace, what that is, what that means, how that plays out. Oh, I've got many a thought on this.
Apparently,
because I disagree, because I fundamentally disagree with what you said a minute ago. It is possible to be a regular someplace.
Yep. Agreed.
Yes, I was for a long time.
Yeah, but let's talk about that next.
But that's also because you live in a smaller town.
No.
False. Next show, Judah, take us out.
Okay, take
Hold
us
on,
out.
hold on. I want my things that I want back.
Okay, so
I've got two
hopefully,
things I want back.
yes. What is that?
I want back legal fireworks. Number one. And number two is I want arena rock back, where when the band comes, everybody goes.
I agree with you 100%. I want arena rock back without people having their phones. Is that what you said?
No, but I like that's a good riff on that. Yeah, we'll do that too.
I want arena back without phones. We have to wrap it up. I want to thank producer girlfriend for putting this up, and everybody, please. Ben, tell us where they could go to find us, haunt us.
Well, you're going to find us on Twitter at numeral 4 ESOTERICS for esoterics. You can also find us at American Greatness, www.amgreatness.com.